On today's episode of the Yaesu The Radio Show podcast, we're going to be doing part 2 of IMRS and Wires-X Together Forever. That's for today, Friday, April 25th, on the Yaesu The Radio Show podcast. And welcome everybody to the Yaesu The Radio Show podcast. I'm your host, John Crook. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in to part 2. Got a lot of people that started to reply back to us and saying, John, I am excited for part 2. It's about time you had this. Thank you for explaining it. I'm looking forward to understanding a little bit more on there, and we're going to go ahead and be doing it. In addition, I want to go ahead and stress on there, last year in 2024, we went along and we did all of our presentations on the connections of Wires-X, where we talked about how we can connect Wires-X, different kinds of set on there, whether it was the HRI-200, whether it was the PDN nodes, all that kind of stuff like that on there. At Hamvention coming up here in less than a month, we're looking at getting that done at Huntsville also too, and we're going to try to go ahead and be doing it up here at CPAC also. There's a couple different ones we're doing it at. We are going to be talking about how you can link DR2X together with IMRS technology, how to integrate that Wires-X technology in there. Looking at doing all these different things together. So if you're listening, you listen to part 1, you're listening to part 2, and you're like, I want to see a little bit more, I have more questions, I want to see operation, make sure you hit one of those events and come on and check out the show there. So once again, part 2, we're going to dive in, talk about setting up the connection, setting about linking, and kind of going from there. However, before we get into today's episode, I want to take a moment and talk about the Hamvention special deals that are being offered as instant coupons through our authorized Yaesu dealers. That's right. It started all the way back on April 10th, runs all the way through May 19th. Now's your chance to get some great deals on these radios. If you're not going to Hamvention, or maybe you want to get some great deals on this radio now before you head to Hamvention in order to be able to stop by and pick up some great accessories for these radios. So first of all, we're offering $190. That's $190 off the FT710 AESS or the FT710 Field. What's the difference between the two? Well, the AESS comes with the speaker already as part of the package, where the field unit does not include that speaker. You'd have to buy the speaker separately or get another one. It does offer the AESS technology, but that does require 2 separate speakers on there. What about mobiles, John? I'm not big into HF. I want to get some VHF, UHF mobiles or handhelds. Great. We have the new FTM 510D in the ASP and non-ASP version for $80 instant coupon through our authorized Yaesu dealers. You might ask, John, what is the ASP? What is this stuff you guys offered? That is our advanced digital signaling processor. What that means is that's going to take that analog signal on there, and it's going to go ahead and take a low audio, low signal strength signal, and it's going to put it through that signal processing, which is going to clear up that audio. It's going to clear up that signal and make it just pop, pow. I mean, it's just amazing on what it can do on there. So that comes option, the ASP board in it already installed, or the non-version, but you can add that ASP board later. That's $80 off. Hey, let's talk about handhelds. Our Fusion, very, very popular, very, very great in high demand radios, the FT5D and the FT70D is $20 off. Now, analog users. I know all you analog users out there are going saying, you know what? Hey, here's the deal, John. Not big into digital. I need a backup handheld. I want a rugged handheld. I want something on there. We're offering $40 off the VX6R. That's right, the VX6R, a tried and true tri-band radio. Yes, it's VHF, UHF at 5 watts and 1.5 watts on 220. It's going to be $40 instant coupon. Or, man, that radio that just is there always, the FT60R. That is going to go ahead and be $20 off instant coupon. And a little secret on the FT60R, you know why it's such a popular radio with a lot of people? Guess what? That radio, whether you're using the supplied nickel metal hydride batteries or the AA alkaline battery case, you're going to get 5 watts out. Other radios, when you use a AA battery case, it's going to drop that power down to a high power of only 2 watts. Not the FT60, folks. That's going to give you the full 5 watts out. head on over to your favorite Authorized. Once again, Authorized Yaesu dealer. Those are only people who are going to offer it to you. Not anybody claiming to be a Yaesu dealer. If they're not authorized, they ain't giving you these deals. They ain't giving you the Yaesu 3-year warranty on all these new things. Head on over and check it on out today. Alrighty, welcome back to part 2. Let's get into the core of this episode here and talk about it. Last week we covered the rules you're going to have to do for setup and understanding setups for a Wires-X node. That was the first part of part 1 last week. Second part, or part 2 of part 1, part 2, yeah, there we go. That talked about some things you have to set up with the IMRS on there. So now let's dive into the operation of the DR2X with the Wires-X node on there. Now, the reason I say dive into it, because there are 2 ways you can set things up with a DR2X with IMRS operation and a Wires-X connectivity on there. So I'm going to start focusing on the DR2X first. So we've talked about setting up your DGIDs last week. Go listen to that episode, last half, part 2 of part 1, however you want to call it there. So you're going to have your DGIDs set up on there. That's what you're going to do. But now when it comes to the Wires-X traffic on the system, now you need to take a moment and figure out, what do I want as a priority on the repeater? Do I want the RF signals coming in from Wires-X to be priority? Or do I want the users coming into the repeater be priority? Now, there's a way you can do it and a way you can set it up, but it's going to take some planning on your end, and you can only answer that question whether you want Wires-X traffic to be higher priority or the local user. Now, the only reason I bring this point up is now when you're linking in this setup here, you're going to be linking systems of systems, okay? We're not linking Wires-X into one repeater. We're not linking IMRS repeaters, which could be how many repeaters you want to link. We're now taking traffic from Wires-X, which can be fed out of a room and could have numerous connections that's going to come through your one connection, which is going to feed that repeater, which is going to use IMRS if it's set up with the right DGID and everything, and that could feed repeaters upon repeaters. So this is the question you have to ask. Now, the reason I bring that up is because we can utilize the A and the B receiver on the DR2X and establish some priority. So in other words, if you set your main repeater frequency, okay? Let's say, for an example, I'm going to just give you an example. 147.255. So on my repeater, I would have the uplink 147.855 because the uplink is what the repeater is listening on, which is what your radios are transmitting. I would have the downlink as 147.255. The downlink is what the repeater transmits and is what my mobile handheld radios in the field are receiving the repeater on. That's the uplink and downlink. Now, if you have a Wires-X feeding in on the input to the repeater 147.855 and you have a user trying to go ahead and talk into that on 147.855, guess what? 2 frequencies can't occupy the same space at the same time, okay? So what you can do in this case is you can take the B side of the repeater and put a receive antenna on the B side. You're not going to worry about transmit. I'm getting ahead of myself there. You're not going to worry about transmit B antenna, okay? But you're going to select a frequency. Now, for this to work, you're going to need a frequency within the same band as what your main repeater is. So in other words, if I'm using 147.255 and as my repeater frequency, the input's 147.855, I'm going to have to use something in the 2-meter band only. So I'm probably going to have to go on the lower side of the 2-meter band on there. I cannot use a different band. And people are like, well, why can't you? It's because of the limitations of the Wires-X software. The Wires-X software was not designed to be multi-band. Alrighty, it's not designed to go and split in the way the Wires-X software is by 300 megahertz. It cannot. And that's where a lot of people get confused because they're like, well, why can't it be that way? Well, it can't be because it just doesn't work that way. Okay? So that's going to be kind of a little bit of a problem on there that you have to be aware of. And the other thing that you want to be aware of is sometimes the split doesn't go the way that you want it to either. When you start getting into these splits on there, it creates an issue. So keep in mind, keep it in the same band, and you're not going to have issues on there. Alrighty? Vice versa, with UHF. You could do UHF on there. Same thing. You set up your normal repeater pair on A, and then you can go to the B side. And then when you go to the B side, you would have in that same band on there. Now, finishing up about the B side, which is going to be important on there, is what you want to do in this case with the B side is you want to go ahead and select on the screen of the DR2X to transmit out the A port. Okay, so you're going to transmit out the A antenna port. Now what this does is anything that comes in on the A antenna receive will go out on the A antenna transmit. But anything that comes in on the B antenna receive will be forced out the A side transmit. So, using an example, let's say my repeater is 444.000. So I would transmit into the repeater on 449.000 because I live in the Midwest and we go in high, come out low. Okay, and I would receive on 444.000. Now let's say we go to the B side. The B side, let's say we're going to go ahead and set it up as 441.000. So the repeater would receive on the B side of 441.000, but when it transmits out, it's going to go out on 444.000. The biggest thing you're going to have if you do this split setup for priority is understanding that you have enough filtering and you have the proper isolation. You cannot use, obviously, the same frequency for the A and the B side. You cannot, folks. Repeater doesn't know. It doesn't know that, hey, you're coming in on A versus B. If you use the same frequency for A and B, what's going to happen is the receiver is keying up both at the same time, and you're going to have a whole different world of hurt and problems on there. Okay? So, think of it that way. Now, here's what you're going to do. When you have it set up that the A receive and the A transmit are your main repeater frequency, and that B side is going to go ahead and be on there, you're going to have to put the B side into the full repeater transmit mode. So it's going to show transmit and receive for the B. But then what you're going to do is you're going to make sure, once again, that you select transmit to antenna port A on the B side. So that way you don't need an extra transmit antenna. And then you're going to have to select the A side as your priority. So what that means now is that normal operation, regular user coming in on A, going out on B, not an issue. Wires-X is going to come in on B in this case and then get routed out to A. But now let's say you have Wires-X talking, going in on B, coming out on A, but then someone needs to get traffic out. They can go in on the A side. Being it's the priority, it's going to instantly, bam, knock out the B from being heard by the repeater. It's going to transmit then whatever is being heard by A. Once A unkeys, if B is still jabbering away, it's going to go ahead and then restart that conversation or transmitting that conversation. Or if in that time B has stopped transmitting, it's going to go back to a normal standby state. So, big and interesting changes there for what you want to do. Now, once again, the reason I say is if you connect your Wires-X node that you're going to feed into your IMRS repeater groups, now what's going to happen is if you're in a busy room, that busy room may be tying up the traffic. Because remember, with IMRS, when you transmit into the repeater, not only is it going to go out via RF wires, but it's going to go down the IMRS system on there. All right? If you got a lot of traffic in a room and stuff like that, you may not have the brakes to be able to go ahead and do that. Because remember, if you have, let's say, 5 IMRS repeaters, what happens is it's going to come in Wires-X into the repeater, and it's going to go out to all those repeaters. So everybody that's on that DGID for that IMRS connectivity is going to be hearing that traffic in there. So keep that in mind. Let's continue on there. So now, with this setup, now that you have that understanding of your repeater, now what you need to go ahead and do is you need to make sure that only one Wires-X connection is coming in to your repeater network. Meaning, if you have 5 different repeaters, you better not be taking and connecting 5 different Wires-X nodes that are all going to go to the same room. You are going to create a loop, and it's going to be a problem, folks. Going to be a massive problem. Okay? Do not do that. At the end, I'll tell you some other things you can do to connect to different Wires-X rooms, but you got to be due diligent on that, okay, at the end. So we're going to take care of that at the end. So in other words, if we have 5 repeaters again, let's go ahead and say, and you have a Wires-X node feeding from, let's say, the Yaesu CQ America room, not America Link, but Yaesu CQ America room. And let's say you have one Wires-X node coming, feeding that into repeater number 1 of the IMRS repeater group. That, when that keys up with the right DGID and everything, traffic comes in from Wires-X, transmits out the radio to the repeater receives it, repeats it locally, but simultaneously sends it down the IMRS out to repeater 2, 3, 4, and 5 if they are on that same group, DGID group. Now let's go ahead and say all the way at the end to make it simple. We have a repeater number 5. Let's say repeater number 5 has a Wires-X node. And let's say repeater number 5 has it set up, and they say, you know what, I want to connect to CQ America room on there. So now what ends up happening is that you have a connection to CQ America room, the Yaesu room. The Yaesu room hears it, transmits, goes down Wires-X out to your node. Your node feeds the DR2X repeater number 1, goes down the DGID out to 2, 3, 4, and 5. Repeater 5 hears it, transmits it, is received by that Wires-X node, which happens to be linked into CQ America room. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to have a loop on a loop, and it's going to be endless loop, endless loop, endless loop, endless loop, until the repeaters time out. Once the repeaters time out, not IMRS timeout now, the repeaters actually time out from the radio traffic. Then, next time someone keys up, it's going to happen again and again and again and again and again and again. So you can only, have one Wires-X node connected to one room at any time. Do not, I say again, do not connect 2 Wires-X nodes to the same room and connect it to the same repeater group. Do not do that, folks. You're going to have a nightmare. All right. Before we go on, I want to take another moment real quick. We get asked this a lot. Talked about it last week. I've talked about it in many podcasts on here. Let's go ahead and talk about authorized Yaesu dealers. Who are authorized Yaesu dealers, John? And why do I want to buy from authorized dealer? Why don't I want to buy online? Why don't I want to go ahead and do something like that? Well, I'm going to tell you why. You don't want trouble. Why do I say trouble? Guess what? They're not an authorized Yaesu dealer. The warranty is not going to apply for your 3-year warranty on your new device. In addition, you're not going to be able to get those great instant coupons and rebates that a dealer can go ahead and give to you that's an authorized Yaesu dealer. Even better or more so, guess what? Our authorized Yaesu dealers go through training. They have direct connections to us. They can call me. They can call our tech team. They can call the different people and say, hey, I got this customer. I got this. Can you help me with it? Guess what? We can help them. They are trained. They know what's going on. Not these other places that claim to be Yaesu dealers and stuff like that. Just stay away. But John, how do I find out who an authorized Yaesu dealer is? Head on over to our Yaesu.com website. On the top there, once you're there, you're going to see it says Find a Dealer. It's going to be right underneath the Yaesu logo and the System Fusion logo. Click on that. It's going to take you to that home page of where you can find a dealer. You can select by your country. You can select some other parameters to get it and find out your nearest authorized Yaesu dealer. And you know what? I guarantee you there's going to be more than what you anticipate on there. So head on over to that Yaesu.com website where you're going to find that great information, and they will go ahead and be able to help you to find out who your authorized Yaesu dealer is. Alrighty. So continuing with your setup then, you have to understand when you have a Wires-X node connected, commands and stuff are able to cross through the IMRS system. Now, the reason I say this is so let's go back to our example here. You have a Wires-X node set up. We're going to go ahead and say it's going into repeater 1 using DGID 55. When it comes in, it's going to come in on Wires-X, going to transmit via the radio connected for Wires-X. It's going to be received by a repeater. The repeater is going to transmit via RF, and then send it down to any of the other repeaters that happen to be, in this case, argument's sake, DGID 55. Let's say that also connects repeaters 2, 3, 4, 5 on there. So now you have repeaters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are all linked on DGID 55. Now, what you're going to do is that if you do not stop your HRI 200 or your Wires-X connection, depending on what setup you're using, from being able to be controlled, someone can go in on any of the repeaters, take their handheld, push the Wires-X button, and if they push the Wires-X button with the proper setup to access your node, whether they're on, regardless if they're on repeaters 5, 4, 3, 2 via IMRS or on 1 via RF, that node, if it's not locked down, will hear the handshake and initiate a handshake. So now all of a sudden, the next thing you know is all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute here. What's the deal? What's going on here? Why is that there? It's important to understand that. And it's also important why some things are happening on Wires-X. So if you are a fan of Wires-X and you can lock out your node from being, while a handshake can occur, you can lock out your node from being allowed to change rooms. But when a handshake occurs, you still, even if you lock the node out from being able to be controlled, like move to a different room or something, you still can do the handshake and you still can go ahead and then hit the ban button to disconnect, send that disconnect command. This is important because if you have an IMRS link system and your one node is feeding repeater 1 and the other repeaters on there don't want to hear this node traffic, that's where you can log in or do the handshake through the network and then send that kill command to disconnect from the room on there. Now, this is also then going to go back on the Wires-X node operator to see if he has a reconnect to the room, those kind of things like that on there. This is where it's going to take, and remember I said in part 1, you really, really, really got to plan things out properly in this case. This is what I'm talking about, because you're going to have to determine, is that node going to be opened or closed? Is that node going to allow the handshakes to take place for disconnecting from the room or, once again, changing the different rooms? Are you going to, as a node owner, have it a reconnect to room or reconnect to another node on there? These are all questions that we at Yaesu can't answer for you, but you have to answer yourself in that connectivity aspect on there. Maybe you're not going to connect to a busy room. Maybe you as your club, group, organization, whatever, have created your own room, okay? Maybe you're Acme Repeater Group and you have the Acme Repeater Wires-X node room. Okay, you're connecting into there. Maybe that's it. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you're going to leave it constantly connected on there. Maybe in some cases, you're only going to have it on for net or connect to other things on there. Just be aware of that. This is also going to lead into something else in just a moment. So keep this in the back of your mind here. Hold on tight, folks. So now when you have that, you have to do that. You also have to go ahead and determine how you're going to do this. Meaning, do you just have it a complete block? Meaning, I don't care who you are, whatever. I'm going to go ahead and key up, send a command. I want the Wires-X node to respond. Well, if you have it that you can't change this stuff in the settings of Wires-X, and that settings is going to be under File, it's going to be under Settings, and then it's going to go to Call Settings. So File Settings, and under Call Settings, that little box on there that says Round QSO Room Connection on or off. It's going to be checked or unchecked on there. Alrighty? Then the next box, a few boxes down, it's going to be Return to Room. If you have that checked, after about maybe 15, 20 seconds, it's going to go ahead and reattempt to that node or room that you have in there. So that's where I'm saying you got to be careful and think of the setup on there. Now, with that also being said, you may want to, as the node owner, or you may have a key group of people that want to go ahead and select and change rooms on there. It's going to be difficult, okay? You really have to kind of set it up and determine how you want to go ahead and do that. And I say that, once again, because while this connection does work, it's not meant to be a free-flowing connection like a normal Wires-X node would be. So if a Wires-X node just feeds a repeater, or a Wires-X node is a simplex node, or as we call them, an SFS, single frequency site, that you can walk around the neighborhood and talk into it, that's going to come into this whole thing here. So be forewarned, be careful, sit down and do some planning, connect the dots on there. Okay? Now, the last thing I want to talk about, before we do a recap here on part 2 and part 1 of the whole thing on there, is that we've been asked, saying, John, can I have 2 different Wires-X connections coming into the network for connectivity? Yes, you can, and I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it. Here's why. Not just me, we don't recommend it. Here's why. You can go ahead and have 2 different Wires-X connections in there. But if those connections are moved to talk and end up talking to one another, not through IMRS, you're going to have a world of hurt because you're going to create a loop. When you create that loop, it's your fault. You did it. I'm warning you, people, if you're not careful on what connects to what, okay, especially Wires-X. I mean, think of it. The IMRS network is a closed network in essence, meaning the repeaters are only talking through IMRS only, okay? Nothing else can connect into there. But now we have Wires-X nodes which pull that traffic out of that, in essence, that closed connection and send it up into the world. If you go ahead and loop on a loop, you're going to have a loop, folks. You're going to have a loop. So that Wires-X node comes out, it goes into a room, and then that room has a Wires-X node and it goes into another repeater. We get so many calls on this, and we tell people, you have this and this and this and this. And people sometimes saying, oh, thanks, I didn't realize that. And then other people, plain right, turn around saying, that's not the case. It's not in any way, shape, or form. I'm going to tell you where a lot of this stuff happens, folks, is it comes in with the hotspot devices. Alrighty, those hotspot devices, people have that connected, and they pull the data off a reflector or something, and then they refeed it back into a room, and it's a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. So just keep those things in the back of your mind. But getting back to it, I say a lot of this, keep it in the back of your mind, because there are a lot of things you need to be aware of when you're setting this up. When you're setting it up, it works great. I run a system like this right now. I have an IMRS connection at my repeater sitting off to my left-hand side here. That is taking the traffic from the IMRS network it receives and actually then goes ahead and pushes it out to my Wires-X node. My Wires-X node then feeds my room that we have associated with this network, and it goes out from there. It works out great, not a problem. But once again, you got to be careful. You got to think of, where the dots are going to be connecting on there. So getting back to this 2 Wires-X nodes on there, yes, it can work. Couple ground rules you need to do. One, you cannot use the same DGID. It's got to be a different DGID. So if you have one node that comes in and feeds repeaters 50, let's say DGID 55, it's got to be a different one. 30, 10, 20, 33, 99, 87, whatever you want to do, have that as a different one on there. Now, some people do this. Some people don't have a problem doing this, because what will happen is that they will have the nodes sitting on there, and they will allow for remote connection and control of the nodes. But where this runs into a problem is that if you have this node up and running, okay, and it's on, let's say, DGID 55, and it feeds into the network, and someone isn't aware that that is taking place, now they go ahead and they connect the other node, let's say on DGID 33, okay? Now what's going to happen is that 33 isn't going to hear 55, right? Because Wires-X software, it's the same transmit and receive. It's going to ignore that. But what's going to happen is you're going to possibly run into a giant clash of the 2 systems together. Because what you're going to have is that if 55 comes in first, goes down the network, 33 is going to sit back and it's not going to go ahead and it's going to listen there or anything, but it's going to try to talk in also too on there. Once 55 drops, 33 in this example is going to come in and it's going to cause problems. In addition, it's going to buffer. So if things are happening with the buffer, guess what's going to happen in that case on there? It's going to be sitting, it's going to be waiting, it's waiting, and then you're going to have it just basically vomit all the stuff that has been buffering because it hasn't been able to transmit on there. Don't do this without really, 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 really good training, education, rules, all those kind of things like that on there. Because, folks, if you don't, it's going to be an utter disaster for you. You're going to have problems. You're going to be calling up saying, John, this isn't working. What is your problem? Why did Yaesu say? Well, we didn't design it this way, okay? You're using it in a way that's meant to be used in this way. You have both connected, which it wasn't meant to be that way. There's no way that we can filter it out because we've asked people and saying, well, can't you stop it from there? No, it's a dumb box, right? It's a computer, it's software, it's technology. Sits and waits. Here's traffic from Wires-X. I'm going to transmit. Here's traffic coming in that matches its signaling. I'm going to receive it and send it down Wires-X. It can't listen to the conversation. It can't go ahead and be like, oh, wait a minute here. This is not the right thing that needs to pass. No, it doesn't work that way. So yes, can you have Wires-X stuff set up that way? Yes, you can. Now, here's the other thing. What's the advantage, John? You've talked about the bad stuff. What's an advantage of having this? Well, it kind of almost allows you to link room to room. So in other words, if you have multiple Wires-X rooms you want to connect, yes, this is a big one, you can now connect Wires-X rooms together. But I'm going to tell you once again, I'm going to warn you. Hear me now, believe me later, okay? You're going to run into an issue if you're not careful because you're going to go ahead and have the possibility of a loop on a loop. Okay? You got to be careful. You got to know who or what is coming on. Now, you will be able to tell from your Wires-X software where the signal's coming in from, where it's going, those kind of things like that. So when a Wires-X is in a room or connected to another node, excuse me, you're going to be able to see, oh, okay, when it's receiving a signal, guess what? It's going to go ahead and it's transmitting, or receiving, I should say. It's going to say internet, it's going to be green. But when it's transmitting in a Wires-X, it's going to show a different type of thing on there. So you can track where it's coming. In addition, you can block call signs in Wires-X. So if you need to block a call sign in Wires-X, you can block a call sign in Wires-X. So has that functionality, has that opportunity in there. Understand it. Now, before we close, I know people get questions. I know people saying, John, I want a little more kind of stuff on there. Can you help me out? Can you do that? Yes, by all means, reach out to us here at Yaesu.com. Pretty much reach out to me. I'm kind of the repeater expert and guru on there. A lot of people that know me, they have repeater questions. They've known that I've interfaced with different controllers, devices, All-Star, these kind of things, all that kind of jazz and all that stuff. So you feel free to reach out to me. You'll be able to go ahead and do it with great ease on there. My email is j.kruk@yaesu.com. Once again, j.kruk@yaesu.com. Send me an email saying, John, help me out here. I'm going to ask for some particulars on your repeaters, so you're going to have to give me that information on there. But I've helped out many people lay out a great system that's going to work for them, and I've also helped out many people that have these connections of Wires-X and IMRS together. I use it myself. Many people talking across the entire United States. I even have people from other countries that come in via Wires-X or come in via the IMRS link, and it's great, and it's an awesome time to have, and a simple connectivity on there. Better yet, it's all true digital fusion protocol, right? It's not reverse engineered protocol or anything. The Wires-X is talking in pure digital with Yaesu System Fusion through Wires-X. It works out great and everything on there. So don't be afraid to ask us for help. Remember, we're going to be talking about this at Hamvention and our other coming shows. So if you have more questions, you don't want to email, you just want to wait until Hamvention right around the corner, jot them down. Come on over to our Yaesu System Fusion presentation. We'll post more details on that when we get closer to Hamvention. So until then, everybody, I want everybody to take care. I want everybody to stay safe. And we look forward to seeing you at Hamvention, and we'll catch you on down the log.